You are an evolutionary empath. The world needs your gifts. Hello, sensitive souls, and welcome to my Evolutionary Empath podcast. I'm Stephanie Redfeather, author of the upcoming book, The Evolutionary Empath, which hits shelves tomorrow on November 5th. I am so excited. If you prefer to order the book, you can go to my website at bluestartemple.org, or you can purchase it through your favorite bookseller online or in stores. And if you go to my website, be sure to download your free copy of my Evolutionary Empath Activation Manual and check out my other products as well. So let's check in on last week's self-care tip. Last time, I challenged you to 30 minutes of movement a day, whether that be yoga, a walk, riding a bike, dancing, or raking leaves. How did it go? Were you able to do 30 minutes a day? How did your body, and really your entire mind-body-spirit system, respond to the activities? Is your body asking you to do more, and if so, what kinds of activities? As we move into the colder months in the northern hemisphere, this physical activity is going to be even more crucial, as I know I personally find it harder to get outside and move when the days are shorter and the temperature is cold. The urge to curl up on the couch with a blanket and a big bowl of chili is way more tempting. So gratefully, I ride horses several days a week, so that helps motivate me to get out. I'm curious, what signals does your body give you when you don't get enough movement? I think that's important to tune into. For me, I get super pent up, cranky, and unsettled. I get this weird feeling in my lungs that's hard to explain. So my body gives me really clear signals when I don't get the exercise I need. And if I'm not active, then you know there's something wrong with me, as my whole life I have craved movement and lots of it. And now, just because I need this frequency and intensity of movement, it doesn't mean you have to. Just listen to your intuition. Find a way to get moving. Your body will tell you what it needs, and it will thank you for it. Be sure to listen in at the end of today's podcast to catch the new self-care tip of the week. So in today's podcast, we're going to talk about boundaries. This is a massive subject that could take up all 12 episodes of the series by itself. So I'm going to hone in on 3 critical skills that should be in any empath's boundary drawing toolbox. Plus, I'll lead off with an essential perspective that helps us understand the need for drawing boundaries in the human dimension. The most important thing to keep in mind when working with and understanding boundaries is a concept I learned from one of my mentors. You and I are one, but we are not the same. This implies a few things. One, it speaks to the fact that we are both human and divine. In spirit form, we are all made up of the same God stuff. We are part of the collective cosmic consciousness. But in human form, we have physical bodies, and in 3D reality, you and I are not the same. We have different interests, tastes, likes and dislikes, beliefs, hobbies, and more. Our individual vibrations are different. In this way, we are separate, distinct, and unique. We have the right to define and occupy our own space. As empaths, remember, it is in our nature to merge energetically with others. It's one of our gifts. But when applied unconsciously, this gift creates a whole host of difficulties and challenges. Boundaries help us figure out where we end and the next person begins. Boundaries help us identify our own individual sovereign space so we can stay seated in our own throne. Boundaries help us determine what is and is not ours. Boundaries help us stay out of codependence, overwhelm, and confusion, and other consequences of unconscious merging. Boundaries also help us create safety, say no, and ask for what we need. They help us stay clean and clear in our interactions with others. Boundaries give us a home, a place to spend time in our authentic selves. Drawing good boundaries is one of the most critical skills for an empath to develop. So there are 3 key skills that should be in any empath's boundary drawing toolbox, and they are: number 1, saying no; number 2, pausing; and number 3, asking for what you need. So let's start with saying no. If you are a lifelong people pleaser, saying no can be one of the scariest statements you can make. If you have spent your existence merging with others, putting everyone else first, or avoiding rocking the boat, then the idea of saying no can feel like standing naked in front of a firing squad. William Ury, author of The Power of a Positive No, says, "No is the tension between exercising your power and tending to your relationships." Now you know I'm going to say that again. No is the tension between exercising your power and tending to your relationship. No is by far the most potent tool in your toolbox. And did you know there are several versions of no to choose from? There's the no, period. No, but. Yes, no. The no period is just what it sounds like. No, and that's my final answer. Depending on what you're saying no to, this response might benefit from a bit of preparation. The higher the stakes, the greater the risk, right? So if your no is a big deal with the potential for significant blowback, it would help to be prepared for the other person's response so it doesn't catch you off guard. When you are unprepared for their response, it can make you ill-equipped to stand your ground, especially if you're prone to reneging on your position. If it is hard for you to disappoint someone, or if your fears of abandonment get triggered, I would definitely recommend practicing your no and gird up your energy field so you are prepared for whatever reaction comes your way. Now, you may think it seems silly to practice saying no or preparing ahead of time, but I'm telling you, if you're a person who avoids saying no like the plague or shoots from the hip with totally inconsistent results, then I'd recommend you give preparation a try. And this is all part of the necessary process of learning to establish boundaries, so you might need to just work on changing some of your habits. The next version of no is the no but. The no but means you're saying no to the initial request, but you're coming back with a counter proposal. And this is where I feel some examples would be helpful. So no but can mean not now, but I can do it at this later date or time. It can mean this doesn't feel right to me now, but I'm open to it in the future. I would love to support you in what you're asking of me, but I cannot do it in the way you are asking. Would you allow me to support you in this other way? I would be happy to do project A, but I wouldn't have time to do project B, and I'd have to put it on hold. Which do you prefer I focus on? I have other priorities I am tending to. Would it be acceptable for me to do this in a week instead of by tomorrow? I need some time to think about this. I don't have time to support your cause, but would you allow me to donate money instead of time? This is a great skill to develop in your boundary toolbox, this saying no, but having a counter proposal. It's a great instrument of compromise where both you and the asker can get your needs met, or at least met in part. Finally, we have the yes-no, and the yes-no is shorthand for saying no after you say yes. And yes, it is possible to say no after you say yes. You might have to eat a bit of crow, but it can certainly be done. And just like with the no but, offering a counterproposal where appropriate helps. So again, here are some examples. I need to apologize to you. I said yes to your request, but as I thought about it, I realize I can't do a good job, or I don't have the time, or I felt how much you wanted me to do this, and I just didn't want to disappoint you. Another example, I looked at my calendar and realized I am completely overbooked. Can we reschedule for? I know this is important to you, but I won't be able to help you with the whole job. I only have time for fill in the blank. Would you be willing to tell me what your priorities are with this? That way I can help you with the most important task. Please know that my family loves spending time with your family, but going to large amusement parks is very difficult and exhausting for me. Instead of coming with you, I'd love to plan a day where our families can get together at one of our homes for a cookout. I can give you 2 hours to fill in the blank, but I don't have the time to do all of what you asked. I can't take you to the airport, but I know someone else who can. So you get the idea. And I realize that some of these may seem remedial, but I can't tell you how many empaths I've had conversations with who wish they were more confident in their ability to say no and enforce it. And I can tell you that in my younger years, I didn't even recognize that this was a possibility. Okay, so the first critical skill in the empath's boundary drawing toolbox was the no, and I just gave you those 3 versions. Now, the second critical skill is the pause, and it's just what it sounds like, pausing. As a recovering people pleaser, I used to feel the pressure of another person's appeal so acutely that I felt compelled to answer in that moment. It never occurred to me that I had the right to say, let me think about this, or let me get back to you. I know it seems ridiculous, but this was especially true when it was a relationship that I really valued, like a boss or a lover. Part of my maturation process has been learning to have a different relationship with what I viewed to be authority figures in particular. So to be fair to myself, in those relationships, my pattern was to lose myself and give my authority over to whoever that was. And pleasing them was especially important to me so that I could maintain love and acceptance and security. When I discovered the power of the pause, it changed everything in my ability to regain my center and answer from my authentic truth. The pause is simply that moment between someone requesting something of you and your answer. Pausing, even just a few seconds, gives you time to collect yourself and choose a response instead of reacting unconsciously. Reactions often come from a place of fear. Responses come from a place of careful consideration. For me, the pause is always accompanied by a deep breath. It gives me those precious few seconds where I can call back any codependent energies that went shooting out to make the other person feel better, and it helps me stay in a neutral place centered inside myself. Pausing also helps us catch unconscious reactions. When we're not fully paying attention or busy or distracted, we can just unthinkingly blurt out an answer. Hey, Mom, can I go over to so-and-so's house? Sure. And then 5 minutes later, you realize, you and your son had planned to go shop for new track shoes tonight for this weekend's meet, and he completely forgot. So pausing is never a bad strategy. The third critical skill in the empath's boundary drawing toolbox is asking for what you need. We don't have enough time to cover this subject thoroughly. There's a lot to it, so let me hit the highlights. Asking for what you need is related to your sense of self. If you've been a lifelong people pleaser, and yes, I keep using that phrase because it's certainly apropos for me because I am definitely a recovering people pleaser. So if you've been a lifelong people pleaser, if your identity has been wrapped up in your spouse or your child, if you don't think your needs matter, if you abdicated your throne so long ago that you can't even locate it under the dust and rubble, then you probably don't have much of a sense of your authentic self. Asking for what you need requires that you can identify what you need in the first place. And I admit this is not always easy. I know this one intimately. It took me years after my spiritual awakening to reconnect my desires, wants, and needs to my mouth. The major task in learning to ask for what you need is getting back in touch with your own needs, preferences, desires, and personality. This reclamation of your identity is something I'll cover in one of the last podcasts. As you practice asking for what you need, if this is hard for you, start out small. If there's less at stake, it will be easier and not feel so risky. Start with things that are minor, such as voicing where you'd like to eat dinner or what movie you want to see, or deciding to take a luxurious bath instead of watching TV with the family like you always do. For big asks that are really challenging for you, set yourself up for success. Here are some suggestions in preparing yourself for asking what you need. If it's a really big deal and it's hard for you to say, then write out what you want to say ahead of time and read it to the person. And let me just say, don't give it to the other person to read because that's a cop-out. You still need to read it. Write out notes or bullet points so you can remember everything that you want to say. If you do use notes or read verbatim what you wrote, be sure to explain to the other person why you're doing this. So for example, honey, when it comes time to say something important or to stand up for myself or to ask for what I need, I get really nervous and I forget what I want to say. I care about our relationship very much and I care about you enough that I want to share with you how I feel. So please don't be insulted or upset if I read this or if I look at my notes. I'm doing it because this is important to me. Make up your own words here. Instead of catching the person off the cuff or off guard, if that's your style, such as, hey, I need to talk to you, you got a minute? Schedule the conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long, big, hairy deal, but scheduling it ensures that you are ready and that the other person has committed to the time. So this cuts down on possible distractions and gives you a better chance of having the other person's full attention. Creating an appointment signals that this is important to you. Before you have the conversation in person, another tool you can use is to speak to the higher self of the other person, to prep or seed their subconscious. So, for example, I call now upon the higher self of my husband. I love you very much, but I find talking to you about finances to be very challenging. There are some things I need to say and some new ideas I want to propose to you. I ask that you help this conversation to go as smoothly as possible and to be focused on love, understanding, deep listening, and the fact that we are a team trying to work together to solve some problems. And another piece of advice, before you speak to the other person, do a little bit of energetic prep. Center yourself, meditate. Do some deep breathing, light a candle, pray, call in your guides. Do something to ground yourself and to connect to your highest self and your highest guides. So in establishing and enforcing boundaries, remember it is like building a muscle. These 3 critical skills are going to take time to learn and practice and get good at, especially if your boundary muscle is atrophied. And boundaries include a wide variety of properties and expressions that we haven't even covered here today. Learning to set good boundaries is a critical tool for empaths as it helps establish your energy container and distinguish your edges. When you begin to define the point at which someone else ends and you begin, then you can start to reestablish your sovereign space, connect with your sense of self, and stay solidly centered in your own being. So, dust off your throne and fluff the pillows because it's time for you to rule your kingdom once again. Okay, friends, it's time for this week's self-care tip. The healing, relaxing, and restorative properties of sound have been known for a long time. I'd like to invite you to play with sound in the coming week, specifically singing bowls, gongs, bells, chimes, or tuning forks. If you're not familiar, sound healing, also known as vibrational medicine, is the practice of using audio tones and vibrational frequencies to repair damaged tissues and cells within the body. It works on the idea that all matter is vibrating at specific frequencies, and sickness, disease, depression, stress cause human beings to vibrate at a lower frequency. Oftentimes, there are specific tools made for or attuned to specific frequencies that work on different levels of disease or sickness. But you don't need to have specialty or targeted sound tools to still benefit from sound. In general, sound therapy lowers stress and blood pressure, improves sleep, helps you relax, reduces depression and anxiety, and improves emotional, mental, and physical well-being, and so much more. I have a few of my favorite sound makers right here, so I'm going to take a moment to play them for you and see how you respond to each one. Wasn't that delightful? There's a couple of ways that you can choose to play with sound. One is you can play your instruments just for yourself, like I did. If you have one or more, just sit with them and play. The second way is if you have somebody else that's willing to play them for you, then you can lie on a massage table or couch or bed and just let them play and fully receive the medicine of the sound. Or 3, if you have any recordings of singing bowls or similar sound makers, then you can also lay down or sit in a relaxed position and fully receive the benefit. So see how it goes. Let me hear about your experiences. Okay, my fellow sensitives, thanks so much for tuning in today. Next week, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of the divine masculine and explain how this blueprint can be called upon to help us create safety, draw healthy boundaries, and serve as a mentor for our personal masculine expression. I'm Stephanie Redfeather, and if you want to find out more about me, my upcoming book, The Evolutionary Empath, or any of my other products and services, go to my website at bluestartemple.org. You can find me also on Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you like this podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to the Sacred Stories podcast. Remember, my fellow sensitive souls, you are an evolutionary empath. The world needs your gifts.